Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Snapshots and Stories with your two co-hosts. I'm Paul Owen and she is Kate Taddick. So welcome so much for to everyone for tuning in, and we're excited about today's show. On today's show, I guess I'll set it up with a little bit of, I don't know, preamble. I guess we'll call it. So this today's show is going to be all about what is in a photograph and our reason for taking the photograph, what approach we took, in other words, what cameras settings did we use, what the final results revealed, and the big question, were we happy with what we found? So we're going to talk a lot about that today on the show. We have one of our viewers who had sent in a couple of photos for us to look at, talk about, and so we're going to do that. And what else we got coming up, Kate?
Well, I'm so excited to see the first submission from one of our viewers. It just means so much that we have interaction right away. So I'm really excited to talk about those today. And I know that we've already started preparing for our next episode, which is a really interesting topic for me. So what we're going to be talking about is our early and current influences on our photography. So maybe, what started the spark, what maintains that spark for us. And when I really started doing some digging for me myself, I realized that there was a lot of different input factors for me that influence and continues to influence my photography, and starts with music, movies, books, poems, different types of art. Anyway, so it was really interesting for me to kind of lay that out. And I'm really interested to hear about your influences, Paul. I know,
Mhm.
like, we've talked about some of it, and it's some you've introduced me to some photographers I didn't know about. And for our viewers and listeners, if you want to share some things that maybe reshaped your brain waves or sparked a new vision for you and started your photography journey, or changed your photography journey, we would really like to hear from you what that might have been. Like I said, maybe it's a movie, maybe it's some songs, maybe it's a book you read. Who knows? Maybe it's a place you traveled to. Send it in a lot, one liner, write up, whatever, to snapshots and stories at outlook.com. Don't be shy. We'd love to hear from you. So, how's that sound, Paul?
That sounds absolutely wonderful. Yeah, send us stuff in. Send in your photos. If by chance you would like to even appear on the show with us someday, send in a request. We'll have a chat because we are really all about photography and other photographers. We don't want to be the two talking heads here all the time. We want to find out what's going on out there in the real world with all you guys, what you're doing, what you're up to. If you had some really cool victories in the last little while, some cool things that are coming up you want to share with other people, by all means, let us know because we really want to get as many people involved in the show as we can, and to certainly have as many people on as well. So, having said that, I think what we'll do is we'll actually jump into our photos that we were going to talk about today. And you just give me a second here so I can bring up my Kate approved phone so I can know what my notes are on this particular photographer. Okay, so we have some photos that were sent in from a viewer. Her name is Carol Wakeham. So, Carol, thank you very much for sending in your photos. And we're going to share a couple of those photos tonight. I'm going to set up a little preamble as to what Carol had in her mind when she took the photo. So she gave me a little bit of story on each one of the photos. We'll get into the settings after, and but I'll talk about the first one first. So let me just get that up on the screen here, and you just give me 1 second. There we go. All right, so we have on our screen our little puffin, and I'm going to give you Carol's little story on it before we start talking about it. And I'm going to let Kate take over about this little bird and how she feels about the photo in a second. So this is what Carol wrote. So she says, the puffin, which was taken in Elliston, Newfoundland. This is a great area in Elliston where the puffins congregate. People are asked to stay quiet while they photographed the birds. I was there for almost an hour. The puffins are very photogenic, and I was able to take a lot of photos. And this was a lifer for me. So that's what Carol wrote about that photograph. And just to say, Carol, I am so jealous because I have not taken a photo of a puffin yet, and I'm going to do it. I had a tour book last year, and the weather, of course, played havoc, and we couldn't get out there. So
Mhm.
anyway, Carol, awesome. I'm jealous. Kate, what do you think?
Yeah, I hear that about the weather. That's such a maritime thing. You know, you really can't count on any adventure until you're actually in it. Yeah, and equally jealous. I've only seen a puffin once in my life, and I I don't know if ironic is the word to use, but I was on a whale watching tour in like one of those small little a small boat with is it a dory or a skiff? I'm not sure. Anyways, we were very close to the water, and I didn't really see any whales, but I looked down and saw this little puffin just floating. Yeah, I could have touched him or her. They were so close, and I was really struck by how small the bird was. I think because a lot of people take the pictures so close up, I always thought maybe they were the size of like a mallard duck or something like that. But anyways, the one that I saw, he was like maybe the size of a rubber ducky. He was so small and cute. Um, anyways, but so yeah, this picture is so good. It's so clear. I really like the colors. The blue is very vibrant, and the green of the grass, and the yellow or the orange tones on the beak and the feet and the eyes.
Mhm.
And I just the little puffin expression, so cute. It just, I don't know. It's very innocent. It's very cute. So I'm sure Carol felt joy when she got this picture, because I know I would have for sure. Um, what do you think? I mean, you're the local wildlife photographer, so I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, for me, I really like the image. I'm just looking at it here now, and I love the colors. I love the, like you said, the expression, the way that he's just kind of walking up and, being a cool little puffin dude. I really like it. I love it a lot. I noticed that when I looked at it at first, I thought, I think this was probably somewheres around high noon when this
Mhm,
photo was taken, only because I look at the shadow on the breast of the puffin from its beak. So it looks like the sun
yeah.
is almost overhead. So when I looked at the data, it was somewheres around quarter to one in the afternoon, obviously on a sunny day. So I kind of noticed that right away. I noticed the colors were just absolutely stunning because orange and blue are they're just synonymous with each other.
Mhm.
Any kind of image that's multi-tone, orange and blue are two of the most famous ones. So just because of the nature of being in nature, it looks so beautiful and natural. I like that. I like everything about the photo. I noticed one thing that I notice when I go shoot, and when I first started shooting birds, especially in a sunny or a day that it's really, really bright out, is a lot of the times we can get a little overexposure on a sunny day
Mhm,
on a bird that's got white because white's very reflective. I mean, that's just the way it is. So if I show you what
mhm,
I mean on that, so if you look around the chest area of the bird, there's just a little bit of spot right in the front there. That's just a little bit overexposed. Now I could be I'm only going on the JPEG that I have. Now, when she shot this, she shot it with the Rebel T6i, and all the settings I looked were just absolutely wonderful. She had captured it just the way it should be captured.
mhm,
But I noticed when I go out and I shoot those kind of things, especially when I first started out, was I wasn't too concerned about that. I was more concerned about the eyes, making sure they're nice and focused and all that kind of stuff. So when you look at the image, she caught all that beautifully. So there's just that little
mhm.
tiny spot right there, which again, for me, to be totally honest, wouldn't bother me with this. I would put this in a frame and put it up because I think it's a gorgeous photo. But if I wanted to make it technically perfect, then I would go in there and I would probably look at that and the way that and I'm going to talk to just beginner photographers now. The way if I'm going to go out there and start taking photos of wildlife, especially birds with white on them, is I want to make sure that excuse me, that I'm not going to be overexposed. Now, there's a way that you can do that. All of our cameras have this wonderful little device in it called a histogram. Most of the digital cameras today, I'll show you what I mean by that. if you turn on the back of your camera, you're going to see something that looks like this. And so it looks like just like a little mountain in the center. And it's broken up into 5 regions. Regions are the darker tones, dark tones, mid-tones, light tones, and the lightest tones. So if I was looking at an image before I took the photo, and I've got my histogram that's monitoring because I know the light's going to change drastically depending on where the bird's moving and all that stuff. I would keep an eye on that to try to keep that probably underexposed just a little bit, and I'll show you what I mean by underexposure and overexposure. So if you look at the underexposure scenario here, when we looked at that image in the front, we saw that most of that mountain was away from both of those, let's just call them goalposts. Most of the mountain was away from those goalposts. So if you look up here on this one on the top, most of the mountain or most of the data, because all that black area is actually the data that you actually captured on your sensor. Most of that on this one is off to that left side, but it's really pushing against that goalpost right from top to bottom. So this is basically an underexposure. If you do it like this, you're going to actually have some data that you can't recover because it's just way underexposed and there's just no data there. So there's nothing to recover.
Mhm.
So you got to make sure you don't do that. Now, if you go the opposite way, which is the next one right below, you'll see that on the right goalpost, all the information is pushed up against it. So now we know that that's overexposed because remember that on our histogram, the light tones are on that right goalpost and the darkest tones are on that left goalpost, right? So when we look at that, that would be an overexposure. So in some part of this photo, there was a part that was happening a little bit because of the little whiteness on the chest of the puffin.
Yeah.
So, so when you're shooting those kind of animals out there, keep an eye on your histogram because it's something that you can have on your monitor screen or in your little viewfinder for most cameras. You can leave that on all the time because sometimes that monitor in the back will fool us. You know how we go home, we take the
Mhm.
picture, and then all of a sudden it's
Mhm.
like that's not how it looked when I took the photo,
Mm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, so that's what the histogram's for, so that sometimes it's a real bright day and we can't even hardly see our monitor. We look through the viewfinder and even that seems it's not quite right to us. So by looking at that histogram, that will never fail you. So, so in the case of this particular bird, was probably a little overexposure is all. So I just want to kind of show that. There we go. We're
So,
back to the
Paul,
puffin.
I have a question about that.
Yep.
Um, yeah, because I know this particular photo, I'm sure, was shot at what many photographers could call one of the worst conditions, high noon, bright sun,
Hmm.
and you've got a bird that is not only elusive, but it is white and black. So, like, that's a really interesting exposure mix to perfect. So, you're shooting wildlife. What's your opinion on? You're out, you're shooting wildlife, you gotta click fast. The conditions of light could be harsh. But you want to see your image on the back of your camera. Would you suggest going underexposed so it looks dark, or like keeping it bright on the back of your camera so you can see it? You know what I mean? So like a quick, like, oh, it's a little dark, but is it better than being overexposed?
Yeah. I would probably go a little in the case like this because there's a lot of white on that bird. So I would probably go a
Mm,
little underexposed. You might want to consider using your auto ISO as well because it will
oh
keep
yes.
you in where you need to be for the most part. It'll always try to give you the best exposure, especially when you're doing wildlife, especially moving birds. Because one minute they're in front of a bunch of trees, the next minute they're up in the sky, which is completely,
Yeah.
totally different condition, and all of a sudden they drop back down into that dark area again. So by having auto exposure on, it always manages that for you. If the bird is not moving around a lot, then what you can do is you can actually slow down your shutter speed, which will automatically drop that high ISO if you're in a darker area and you haven't got a really efficient lens. In other words, a lens that'll open up, like an f2 or something like that.
Mhm.
If you needed to get that much light gathering at depending on how dark it is in the day when you're capturing these. In this case, it wasn't, but in any event, just make sure that you keep an eye on the exposure. Look at the histogram, like you said, just keep it more to the left than to the right. And if by being in that auto ISO mode, it should kind of look after things. So yeah, slow the shutter speed down so that you can drop the ISO. The bird's not moving, so you don't need to have it at 1/16th of a hundredth of a second. You can put it down to like 1/400th of a second because they're not moving that much. and then snap the image. If they start moving around again, just increase your shutter speed. Your ISO will
Mhm.
automatically adjust as you go along with that as well. So that might be something, a place to start anyway.
Great. So auto ISO if your camera allows it, and worry about your shutter speed. It's kind of a
Yep.
good combo for bird
Yeah.
photography.
Yeah. There is one other thing on your camera. It's called exposure compensation. You have to be in
Mhm.
some form of an automatic mode. If your camera is in totally manual, then you can't use exposure compensation. So long as you have some automatic thing turned on in it, then you can use exposure compensation. So that means that if I'm using that auto ISO and it's still a little
Mhm.
bright, then I can actually take my exposure compensation and drop it down a couple of notches, and it'll actually bring that down. So I still have control over that too. So these are things that are on all cameras. And in fact, I'll just show that exposure compensation. I'm not going to go through how to use it. I'll just show you what it looks like. It's
Oh,
right there.
great.
So if you, on the back of your camera, you can see when you look at the back of the camera, lots of times you'll have this little scale, and the scale will show
Mhm.
you 0 to +3 or 0 to -3. And that is
Oh,
plus
great.
three stops of light or -3 stops of light. So that's the one that you want to use. So if you want to underexpose it a little bit more, go towards the left. If you want to overexpose it a little more, go to the right.
Oh, it's pretty intuitive, really.
Yeah, it is. That's the beautiful thing
Yep.
about cameras today is they take all these things
Yes.
in consideration. So anyway, so that's the
Love it.
first image. Kate, what do you really like that little puffin, don't you?
So cute. Yeah.
Okay, well let's move
Makes me
on to
want
the
to book
second
my own
image.
tour. Yeah.
Definitely got to get out and do that. All right, let's look at the second image, and this one we really like. Now this is the fox. I'm just going to let you go ahead and talk about the fox.
Oh, yeah. I mean, who doesn't love a fox? Look at that face. This photo, based on the light, the purple and the green kind of background and lighting, I'm going to I'm gonna guess that this was probably taken at dusk, which is my favorite time to shoot. And I feel that this time of day really complements the fox's fur. You can even see it kind of reflecting in the white part of its fur too. The expression on its face, it's looking directly at the camera. So Carol, this must have been a moment between you and the fox. And I am actually maybe more jealous of this photo. I particularly love foxes. They're just the cutest. Um, so, Paul, did she say where she took this photo?
Yeah.
This is New Brunswick, right?
Yep. So yeah, actually, here's the little preamble that she wrote for this photo.
Okay.
So Carol writes, she says, I took this photo in Hanwell, so just outside of Fredericton. Actually, I think it's
Oh,
part
cool.
of Fredericton. The fox was visiting on the property. I went out to take photos, and the fox was as interested in me as I was in him. He actually laid down on the ground and yawned. I was able to
Oh
take
my
about
gosh.
30 photographs before he decided to walk down the road. Now, when I look at the data on this particular one, she took this at 7:40 in the evening in April.
Okay.
So you were right, Kate. Dusk. She got it at
It's
dusk,
just
and
dreamy.
yeah, it's a beautiful photograph. Just an absolutely wonderful photograph. When you look into it, this is probably the most intense part of a fox is that all of its fur is so soft and fluffy
Mm,
almost, right?
hmm
But
hmm
when you look at the eyes are usually that's the thing that just snaps right in, and it just draws you right into it. And being
They
outside, you got
are a
those beautiful,
striking animal.
yeah, you got those beautiful catch lights there, and the fox's eyes are alive. It's just absolutely a wonderful photo.
Hmm
Is there anything that you think you might want to do the photo like that one? I mean, it's all on its own. The
Well,
photo's wonderful. I
yeah.
absolutely love it. But if there was one little thing that you could reimagine on it, what would it be?
Well, I mean, the fox is slightly off. I mean, it's off centered. The tree kind of takes up, you know, more than half of the photo,
Hmm.
and I feel there could be a time and place for that. If that photo had to have text on it, you know, for there was something else being put there,
Yeah.
that would be perfect. But just for the fox on its own, you mean there's probably some different things you could do to play with the like the composition of the fox
Hmm.
in the photo.
Okay.
What do you think? Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, that's the only thing that I saw that I would if I had my druthers and if I was going to take this and say put a frame around it or something, or
Yeah.
even just share it on social media, because we're used to seeing tall, narrow photos. I would probably crop it in just a little bit, just to draw more attention away from the tree and a little bit more into the fox. And if I was using that rule of thirds, I mean, I'm not
Mhm.
a stringent rule guy, but that does put that line right over the fox's nose, and it really kind of balances it out. You still see the tree, you still see the background, you still see everything that was intended in that photo, but just a little less distraction with the tree and more all about the subject. That's about the only thing, if I had my druthers, that I would do with that. Because other than that, it's an absolutely wonderful photograph.
Yeah. Yeah,
All
that's the
right.
thing. With wildlife photography, especially with elusive animals, you take that photo,
Yeah.
and sometimes the moment can be so overwhelming, that you're just so happy you got the photo, and maybe you don't even take another one because you just want to be in that moment where you connected with the animal. And you might get back home and look at the photo and be like, "Oh crap, it wasn't really centered, or it wasn't whatever." But when you look at that photo, you remember that moment that you had, and
Yeah.
it's a very unique moment. No one else will ever have it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's Carol's experience with that fox, and which is a really good one. Because
Amazing.
anytime I try to get foxes, I get a little close, and then they kind of scurry away.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing that photo. We'll go back to us here. There we are. We're back.
Um, I
Um,
Back to the foxes for 1 second. I don't Have you been to PEI and seen the foxes on the island there?
I have not, but a friend of mine did, and he actually took photos. I guess it's dangerous, and I won't
Mhm.
recommend that you do it. But he would take some hot dogs, put them in his mouth, get down on his hands and knees, and the fox would come up and take the hot dog from him. He showed me some photos of that. It was unbelievable.
Oh my gosh, I did not expect you to say that.
So they're a little bit
That
more
is
friendly down
funny.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, I'd love to have him on the show. That's so funny. But I heard, and I could be wrong, that the reason there's a big fox population there is there used to be a fox farming industry there, and
Okay.
then it was abolished, and they were just kinda left to themselves.
Oh,
But I don't
okay.
know that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
and that's what they're so tame.
Yeah, and I guess there's lots of them, they say. So,
Yeah,
if we're he rented one of the cabins down there near the water. I'm not sure what part of the
okay,
island, to be honest, but he, yeah,
yeah,
he just every time he went down,
cool.
it was all about visiting the foxes. So, anyway, that
I
was a big part of his trip. So,
You'll have to send me some of those photos if he shared them.
yeah, I've never been there for that. I've been to PEI, but not for that. But I would love that experience now that I'm taking
Yeah,
pictures. Yeah.
not with the
So
hot dog, though.
that was a hot dog. Yeah. So I don't know how well he
Wow,
would digest that, but in any event, he is a
that's
wild
amazing.
animal, and we have to respect that too. So,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, and I think that's something else we'll talk about too on this program as we get rolling. Because I do a lot of wildlife photographer, and I know a lot of good wildlife
Mhm.
photographers, and I think that's one of the most popular things in the spring and summer, even fall, that people like to do is to go out and take pictures of birds and foxes, horses, whatever they happen to do. So there are some, over the years that I've been doing that, I've learned some pretty helpful things to be able to get the best out of those images. And there's another fella, I'm going to talk to him before I mention his name. Actually, I'll mention his name because he's cool. Nathan Robinson, who just lives up
Okay.
in the Fredericton area, and he does moose tours. He takes people to the
Ooh.
back, deep, deep, deep woods where the mooses are and where they're actually living, and doing some really cool wildlife like that.
Wow.
So hopefully sometime I'll do that with him. But I would love to have him on the show to talk about that, and I think he'd be happy to come on. So anyway, that's one to
Oh,
look
yeah.
for.
Be really curious on his method of how he gets people that close. Um,
Well,
like, do
yeah,
they cover themselves in scent? Do they take a vow of silence? How does that happen? That's crazy.
it's interesting. He was a hunter by nature, so you learn a lot of that stuff and about where to be and where they are and how to track and all.
Mhm.
Like you really have to know a lot about that kind of habitat to be able to get the
Yeah,
successful photos that he gets. And some of his
yeah.
photos are just amazing to see. And he does a lot of fishing stuff too. And
Cool.
anyway, he's a really cool guy that we'll talk about. But yeah, so
Okay.
that'd be fun.
Yeah, totally. Love to meet him. talk to him.
Yeah, absolutely. So what else we want to talk about, Kate?
Well, we're probably almost out of time. I feel like our 30 minutes goes by so fast.
It
I'd
does.
love to encourage people to submit their photos again to our email. I think it'll show up at the bottom. Will it?
Yeah,
I'll
let me
say it
drop
again
that
just in case.
I'll put it up here again. Sorry. I should
Okay, no
a little
problem.
bit more. Whoops, not
Hey, it's
that one.
episode 2. We should cut ourselves some slack.
There we go.
Uh, yeah, so snapshots and stories at outlook.com. And yeah, just feel free to share, anything with us. Like I said, your origin story of being a photographer, some photos that you've taken, questions if you want help with something, or you
Mhm.
just want to show off your photos that you've taken. We'd love to see them, and like in any feedback that you have, but don't be too hard on us. It's only episode 2. Yeah, so as the seasons change, Paul and I both live near the river. I'm already being blown away by the local photography that we're seeing coming out of
Yeah.
the earlier and more brilliant sunrises, sunsets. I'm seeing people boating on the river.
Mhm.
It just happens so fast. I love watching the seasons come and go on the river here. We're so lucky to live in this area.
Yeah.
And like I said, next week we're going to be talking about our own origin stories of photography and what continues to inspire us. Um, I think you can learn a lot about somebody by kind of asking a little bit of, probing questions of, oh, cool, like you weren't always doing this. So how did you start and why are you here? So um, I think that's all I have, Paul.
Okay, I'll have
What are you
just
thinking?
another little thing I want to add to that, which we
Yeah,
haven't talked about yet, and but I do want to talk about is if you're looking to get some equipment or you have some equipment and you're having trouble with settings, you're not sure what lens to use with what type of photography, we're happy to talk about that. If you're thinking
yeah,
about getting a new rig, by all means, let us know what you're looking at. I'll do some research, I'll bring it up. We can look at some stuff online together and talk a little bit about what you may be looking at, pros and cons and that kind of thing, and that sort of stuff. So, I would like to certainly get into some of the technical aspects of it, not deep, but just for those beginners who are getting started
yeah.
and want to know, okay, I want to start doing photography, but I want to do this kind of photography. So, what should I be looking for? So then, based on that photography and all the physics that go along with taking those photos, then we could say, okay, well, based on that, this might not be a bad way to go or get started and that kind of stuff. So we'll talk about those kind of things and bring those up, and we're going to be talking about some authors that some books that I'm reading that inspire me, and I've got a couple, one that I'm reading now by just get this book over here so I can get this out. See if I can get his last name right. Duchemin. So this book is by David Duchemin. It's called Light, Space, and Time. And what this guy is a photographer. He does a lot of wildlife stuff, but he does other kinds of photography as well. And but he writes. He's been doing this for many years. This is his third book, and he tells a lot about what his struggles are when he goes out to get these photos, because you just don't go out there, get your camera all lined up, take that one photo and there's your shot and you go home. That's not how wildlife photography
Right.
works. And he talks a lot about the pitfalls that people get into in terms of getting into these what's that word we're looking for when you're not doing, you're not
A rut.
for a rut. Thank you. I should talk to Nathan Robinson. That's what the moose do. Anyway, about getting into a rut and what he does, about what's right and what's wrong and what is right and what is. Anyway, it's a really good book and there's a lot of cool stuff. So I'll be pulling stuff out of that, and maybe someday I'll send him a message and see if I can't get him to come on the show and talk about that, because I think it would be absolutely wonderful. So
That would be.
anyway, yeah. So I think that kind of covers us for this week, Kate. So
Yeah.
Carol, thank you so much for
Yes,
sending
thank
in
you.
those information and those photos. We were just
Yep.
so pleased to get that and really loved your work. Really, truly loved that stuff. And if you want to send more in, please do. We would be absolutely thrilled to have them and put them on. And for those folks out there again, snapshots and stories at outlook.com. Send in your photos, send in your comments. If there's something you saw on the show you liked, tell us about it. If there's something you didn't see in the show that you would like to see, tell us about that too. Other than that, I think we're going to say sayonara for now. So from me, Paul, and from Kate, thank you so much
Bye,
for
guys.
watching, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Bye.